Very, very essential. It's not merely for award of degree or diploma. That is a basic criterion. But for greater
Knowledge level.
purposes, I think
Got it.
we need to
Hmm.
publish. So that is why Miller says, if it wasn't published, it was not done at all. So if you do not publish, as though that you have not done the research. So if you have done the research properly, you have to publish it and contribute to the overall knowledge base. That is what I mean to say. Now the question comes how to write a research report. And of course, just like any activity, writing report is also a systematic activity, and any system should have steps or stages in that. So there are steps in preparing the report. What are the preliminary considerations? What are the parts, or what are the what you can say the divisions that are available in research report? So you have an introductory part, and then we talk about main components of a research report. Basically, a thesis. When I say research report, I mean a thesis. Of course, this can be applied to other reports like project report, etc. But basically, a thesis. What are the main components of a thesis? Then, what should be the style and layout of the research report? Then, what are the common weaknesses in writing, which usually, as a evaluator of thesis, I have evaluated more than 150 theses, and I find a number of weaknesses in the way the students write. So, what are the common weaknesses in writing? Then, afterwards, once you know the common weaknesses in writing, we can revise and finalize the text. So, these are the common things which are going to look at in writing this report. Now, what are the preliminary considerations? Now, preliminary considerations are, first of all, you should be able to judge for whom the research report is and how will they read it, whether it is for technical experts, whether it is for policymakers, whether it is for fellow researchers, whether it is common man. So you have to decide for whom the report is. Now, if it is a thesis, it is for an expert. It is for a technical expert who will examine your research questions, your methodology, your data collection, your data analysis, and your writing of the results. He will see meticulously everything. Then you have to be very, very cautious in what you write. So therefore, when you're writing thesis, you should ensure that you should follow many systematic aspects. And the second issue is how this new information, what you present in the form of a thesis, will help the readers, whether it is technical expert, fellow researchers, policymakers, or common man, how it is going to help their understand. Because any purpose of knowledge is to help people to understand their problems and solve the problems. So it is going to solve them. So this is what is the issue. Then what is the reliability of findings? See, you have done experiments, you have done data collection, you have done data analysis, you have adopted scientific technique, whether these are reliable. Can we believe upon this? Because based on this only, you are going to give suggestions, recommendations, policy measures, etc. So how reliable your studies are. So we need to keep this in mind for whom we are going to write the report. Then what is the new information that I am giving, and what is the reliability of the information that I am giving. These three things we need to keep in mind initially. Then when it comes to writing the report, usually we begin with an introduction, where the introduction should have a logical, clear structure. It should be to the point and use simple language and have a pleasant layout. So layout also you need to take care. You cannot club the words, make it clumsy to look at. You should have adequate margins. The font size should be readable. Then space between the lines should also be comfortable for the reader to read, to pass through one line to another line, etc. So that way the language and layout should be very, very pleasant. Should be very, very specific in what you are saying in the introduction. So therefore, you should be up to the point. It will be logical and clear in the sense what you are going to discuss and how it is organized. So it will be very, very simple and logically organized. Now, once we have the introduction, then comes the main components of a thesis or research report. What are the main components of thesis and research report? In fact, I have put them in points, but you can classify them in three broad divisions. First division is preliminary pages. So preliminary pages include the first bullet point, starting from title and cover page. till list of observations, list of abbreviations. So that will be the preliminary part. Second part is body of thesis. That is introduction till conclusions. So that is body of thesis. So preliminary part including the title and cover page, summary of the study design findings and recommendations, acknowledgements, table of contents, list of tables, figures, list of abbreviations. This comes in the preliminary pages. Then introduction, objectives, methodology, research findings, discussion, conclusions, recommendations. It is the part of, it is the body of the thesis. And references, annexes, etc. It is the complementary part or concluding part, wherein you are adding some of the additional information for the reader to understand. But anyway, this is the broad thesis. And in the body of the thesis, wherein I have mentioned here about introduction, methodology, research findings, discussion, conclusions, recommendations, around 4 to 5 chapters. But depending upon your study, you can decide what should be the number of chapters in your study. So introduction is 1 chapter, methodology another chapter. In the introduction, you have the statement of the problem, including literature review, and objectives comes there only. Then methodology is another chapter. Research findings and discussion, it can be 1 chapter or two chapters. Then conclusion and recommendations can be another chapter. You can decide the number of chapters in discussion with your guide and by looking at your own studies content by others. So that is the body of thesis. Then comes the concluding part, wherein you have references and annexure. References are, as I mentioned in the first session, all the sources from where you have collected information, that is literature, data, and other information. Whatever you have referred, those references should be part of the references. Then annexures are some of the aspects like bigger tables which cannot be put into the main text. They should become main annexures. And certain tools like you may develop some models. Those models can be put in the annexures. And some data collection tools which are specifically designed. For example, you might have designed a focused group discussion. And how did you design the focus group discussion? This description can be given in the annexures. So some information which is complementary to the text, but which cannot be put in the text, or which will be simply a repetition, or which will be very much redundant there, it can be a part of annexures. And in annexures, you also have to include your questionnaire, your schedule, your data collection tool, which you have used. So that has to be put in the annexures. So references, annexures, they come as the concluding part of the thesis. So there are 3 parts. Please remember, one is introductory part, body of the thesis, and the concluding part. So these are the 3 aspects of thesis. Now coming to each individual aspect of previous slide. So the first one which comes to our mind is the cover page, which should contain title, names of the authors with their titles and positions. Of course, for thesis, there will be a single name, but it will have the name of the supervisor also, the researcher's name, supervisor's name. Then you have institution that is publishing the report, or the institution where the thesis is being submitted. Say it may be Department of Commerce, then University of whatever university you are submitting it. Then comes the month and the year. This format is almost well established, so you need not spend much time on that. You will definitely, you have to only change the title of the thesis and the name of yourself and name of the guide. Then you have, after the title page, you need to give the summary or executive summary. Now summary can also be before the first chapter, but even if you give it immediately after the cover page also, there's nothing wrong in it, because many people, especially policy makers and bureaucrats, they will not have time to read the whole report or whole thesis. So if you give summary there, they'll be very happy to glance through the summary and appreciate the work that has been done. So summary should be written only and after the first or even the second draft of the report has been completed. So wherever there is report, please read it as thesis. So summary has to be written only when you complete the first draft of the thesis. Otherwise, certain things may get missed after the revision takes place. Some certain things can be missed. And the summary should contain a brief discussion of the problem, why this study was needed, the main objective, what was studied, the place of study, where it was studied, the type of study and methods used, how it was done, major findings, followed by all major recommendations. So why, what, where, how of the research has to be put into practice. Of course, there are different summaries. For thesis, we have synopsis. For reports, we have executive summary. For others, it is simply a readable summary in common man's language. So there are different varieties, but for thesis, we prepare a synopsis. And synopsis also contains all the items which I have mentioned there. So why the problem was studied, and how, what objectives were tested, what was the methodology adopted, etc. is put in, and what are the recommendations and suggestions, findings are also come in the synopsis. That is the summary part. Then you have acknowledgements, because you want to thank everyone whom have helped you in your conduct of research. Everyone, whereas directly or helped indirectly, you want to thank everyone. Especially, basically, you should not forget an institution which has allowed you to take admission, do research, and even might have sanctioned you leave, might have sanctioned some financial assistance. So for that purpose, you need to thank your institution, and especially thank the libraries which you have visited. And most importantly, if you have used primary data, thank all the respondents who have given you the information. That is very, very essential. Then after acknowledgements, you have table of contents, which is very, very essential. The table of contents is chapters and page numbers. And if you give even section wise page numbers also, it is very, very good. But there's no hard and fast rule that you should also give section and page number. But if you give, it is better for the examiners, especially in thesis. The examiners want to go to a particular section, and if you just point the number in your table of contents, that would be very, very easy. Then you can also, after the table of contents, you should have a list of tables and list of figures, because in nowadays we use a lot of graphics. It may be in the form of Excel tables, or it may be in the form of charts, graphs, it may be in the form of embedded figures, etc., even photos, maps, etc. So all these have to be properly mentioned, which in which chapter, which table has been used, which figure has been used, which map has been used. So these have to be given, and again with respect to page numbers, so that the examiner or the general reader does not find it difficult to locate what he wants to do. And last but not the least, again, is the list of abbreviations. Nowadays, we are using a lot of abbreviations. Many times, the same abbreviation can mean different things, and we get confused by that. So therefore, it's always advisable to use the list of give the list of abbreviations before you begin your thesis proper. Then, in the research report, you have, as I mentioned, these various chapters. Of course, objectives can be part of first only, especially for theses. Now, this is, as I mentioned, this is for research report. For theses, objectives will be part of the first only. The first chapter is introduction and objectives. Second is review of literature. Third one is methodology. And let me clarify here, nowadays, almost all the theses, almost all the researchers are giving separate chapters for both review of literature and methodology. Methodology should include a description of the study type, the major study variables, then study population, sampling methods, size of sample, data collection techniques, and how the data was collected and by whom, whether you went yourself personally or you hired interview investigators. So how did you collect the data, that you have to very, very mention. Then most importantly, procedures used for data analysis, including statistical tests. Now, everyone insists that the research has to be very, very specific, very, very exact. For that purpose, statistical testing is adopted. So what statistical tests you use, whether you use chi-square test, F-test, ANOVA, or did you use regression model? So whatever statistical technique you use, that has to be clearly mentioned. So methodology is how exactly you have done your research. That will be clear. And if that is scientific and systematic, all other things will be systematic. Then chapter 5 or chapter 4 rather would be research findings. Again, as I mentioned, it can be one chapter or two chapters or three chapters. And usually for a social science research, we have the socio-economic background of the study area and study sample. That can be a separate chapter. That can be added as a separate chapter here. After methodology, the background of the study area or study population can be a separate chapter. Then your research findings, as I said, you can have 2 to 3 chapters based on your objectives, based on your data, based on your findings. And the next chapter is discussion, wherein you try to relate your findings to the earlier studies, to the policy, to the reality, to different viewpoints. So you try to discuss the results, interpret them in a proper manner. Then last one is based on your research findings and discussion, you arrive at conclusions and recommendations. So this is how you format your research report. Of course, as I said, this is not a hard and fast rule that you have to go by this pattern only, but this is a broad pattern in which you can arrange your research report. Then after that, we have the references. References, I have mentioned earlier in my presentation that referencing is very, very essential. Unless you cite, unless you cite, it is as good as you have plagiarized. It means that you have simply copied and pasted, and you have not bothered to mention the names of the original authors, which is now considered to be a criminal offense. And if it is detected later on, the decree may be withdrawn, and even punishment may be given. Other types of punishment may be given, and even many scientists like you are have been subjected to a lot of problems because of these plagiarism issues. Therefore, please do the referencing very, very systematically. In the in the first presentation, I told about different styles of presentation. There is APA style, there is MLA style, there is Chicago style. And here there is also a Harvard style also is there. There are many styles, but depending upon the kind of referencing that your specific discipline, commerce, sociology, economics, etc., you have to follow that particular citation pattern, and based on that you have to prepare the references. And in the reference section, the references have to be arranged alphabetically whatever system you adopt, then alphabetically they have to be arranged, so it will be easy to locate a particular reference. Say for example, if I referred some Patil in the literature section, immediately I should go to the reference section and see which Patil it is, where, what is the title of the article, where he has published, who is the publisher, etc., when it was published. So I should be able to locate the source. That is why correct referencing is very, very important. Then annexures or appendices, as I said, these are some material which cannot be put in the text, but to enhance the understanding of the whole work, these are put as appendix or annexures. Sometimes there is a limit, page limit or word limit to the reports, and in that case we need to put in the annexures. Even for a thesis also, some bigger tables are put in appendix and annexures. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have developed a model, that can be put as annexure. If you have a questionnaire or schedule as a question and as a data collection tool, that has to be put in the annexure. And if there are some photos which are relevant but which cannot be put in the text, they can be put in the annexures also. So annexures can be used to put supplementary or additional material for the purpose of understanding of what you have done, how you have done, etc. So this is the pattern that you have to follow. Now I come to the style and layout. Style and layout is also important, because unless the report is of a particular style, it will not be appealing to the reader, whether it is an examiner or a common man or a bureaucrat or a technical expert. The style and layout should be appealing, so that the persons look pleased to go through your report. And as far as the style of writing is concerned, please note that the reader is short of time. Nobody has patience to read except for the examiner who goes in detail the report. Others have no time at all to read your report. So you are preparing a thesis for the examiner only. That you have to remember. They are short of time, has many other urgent matters demanding his or her interest and attention. It means he has many other obligations. Then they cannot focus time on reading your voluminous report. So therefore, you will have to keep the writing in a simple manner, as far as possible, avoiding the technical jargon. So in the research report, though we use many concepts, theoretical parameters, but in writing, we should avoid these technical aspects and technical jargon. They should be part of methodology chapter. But apart from methodology chapter, in other chapters, the technical terms should be as far as avoided. So you can use some similes or synonyms for that. But as far as possible, it should be in a generally understandable manner, avoiding all technical jargons. Then style of writing, there are certain rules. So you have to be simple, keep to the essentials, only tell what is required. Don't go beating around the bush. It is not advisable in doing research, especially if you are submitting your research papers to a peer reviewed journals. If it is too much descriptive, they will immediately reject it. So therefore, keeping the things simple and up to the point is very, very essential. And please, second important rule is you have to justify. That means to say, unless there are facts to substantiate your argument, you should not make the statement. You should, in other words, if it is to be a research report, all your arguments need to be based on hard data. Only if data is there, you need to make statement. Otherwise, do not make statement. And another third rule is quantify when you have the data to do so. You have to quantify. I have given some words there. Avoid large, small. Instead, say 50%, 1 in 3, etc. Half of them, etc. So avoid showing large, because large and small are ambiguous. Okay, for a concepts like large farmer, small farmer, there is definition. But when you're talking of quantities, saying large or small will not be very, very useful. But you can say obviously half of it, or 50%, or 1 in 3, 1/4, etc. That you can definitely look into. Then be precise and specific in phrasing of your findings. Don't again use too much of description. Be very, very precise. And most importantly, inform, not impress. Avoid exaggeration. The research report should never contain superlative statements. It's not contain superlative statement. It should be very, very positive, very, very down to earth statements. No exaggeration, no impressive quotes, etc. It's only to inform what you have done. And the next tool is use short sentences. Use short sentences. So always, it's always said, better writing is done through short sentences, short paragraphs, short chapters, etc. So break up the chapters, no issue. And the chapters, break them into sentences, no issue. Paragraphs, sorry. Then break the paragraphs into small sentences. So that will be very, very readable, and you can also manage it very easily. So therefore, use short sentences, short paragraphs, and smaller chapters, etc. And next rule is use adverbs and adjectives sparingly. Adverbs and adjectives are qualitative notations. So in research, qualitative notations have very, very little space. So unless it is a qualitative research, even there also you have to be very, very specific. But in certain cases, we cannot avoid them. But in majority of the cases, please avoid qualitative notions, especially adverbs and adjectives. They have to be used very, very sparingly. And most importantly, as I was telling about in the first presentation, English is not our language, it's a foreign language. So therefore, we always mistake in using the tenses, in using the verbs, in using gender, etc. So using the number, gender, tense, and uh, number, gender, and tense, we have to be very, very careful, and we need to be consistent. And usually when you write the report, it will be in the past continuous sentence. It is reported that, it was found out that, like that. It would be in the past, usually in a past tense manner. And last, aim to be logical and systematic in your presentation. That means you follow the system that you follow, like the data collection, data analysis, finding, etc. There also you go by objectives, what objectives you have laid down. So that presentation has to follow. So this has to be the style of writing. Next comes the layout of the report. Again, layout will help to make a good initial impression, encourage readers, and give them an idea how the material has been organized, so that reader can make a quick determination of what he will read first. So as I said, the readers will have no time, will be selective in reading the reports. So for that purpose, you need to make the report very, very attractive and easily locatable. Any point whichever the reader wants to know, he should be able to easily locate that particular point. That has to be the objective in making the layout of the report. Now, again, with computers, the layout can be easily determined. It can be pre-specified, and your report will continue with the same initial format only. That is not a very difficult thing. So, for the layout of the report, certain points to be noticed are an attractive layout for the title page and a clear table of contents, consistency in margins and spacing, consistency in headings and subheadings. So try to use the font sizes properly. The same font size for tables, I mean to say titles, the same font size for section headings, the same font size for the text, then same font size for the tables, for references, etc. So try to use the same font size. And if you make certain things bold, please maintain that bold things. If you make certain things italics, please maintain italics everywhere, so that the table, once we look at a particular page, we'll come to know that yes, this is the section, this is the table heading, this reference, easily it will be locatable. Okay. And of course, the font size you can adopt, but usually we adopt 12 font size for the text, 14 font size for the section head, and 16 font size for the chapter title. And double spacing was adopted earlier, but now 1.5 spacing is also okay. And it's better to print on only one side of the thesis, because many times both the sides may not be easily readable. But now with computers, we can, many theses also come in both side printed outlay. That is also not very difficult. And good quality printing and photocopying, correct drafts properly, and numbering of figures and tables has to be very clear. And you know how the tables and figures are numbered. Usually we go by chapter number. So in the, for example, in the third chapter on socioeconomic background, I have a table. Then I start with table number 3.1, wherein 3 is the chapter number and 0.1 is the table number. It goes on like that till the end of the third chapter. For fourth chapter, again, I start with 4.1. Similarly, figures also. I start with figure number 3.1, then I go to the end of the table. Then for the fourth, I start with figure number 4.1. So for every table, chart, figure, or map, I start afresh, but I prefix always the chapter number. I always prefix the chapter number and then put the table, chart, or figure, whatever it is. Then I go about that. So please maintain that pattern. That will be very useful. And if you are using quotations and references in your text, again, there has to be consistency. Many times when we use paraphrasing, we use quotation marks and bring them into the center of the text by reducing the margins, both left and right margins. So if you follow that pattern, it will be everywhere in the thesis. Or if you put it in the text with inverted commas, that has to be the pattern which has to be followed. So for quotations and references, you follow the same pattern. References, many times we use the numbering pattern, or we use into bracket pattern. So whatever pattern we use, that has to be consistent always. So the consistency has to be maintained whatever way you write that. Then I said there are certain common weaknesses in writing. What are these common weaknesses? Many times what we do not look at while writing is, and I'm sorry, nowadays many people don't write at all. They simply try to, especially for, except for analysis chapter, the other things they only try to copy and paste, which is very bad thing. Even they do not try to correct the mistakes which are there in the earlier draft. So that is a wrong thing, which I have many times marked in my report. So, but anyway, you have to keep practice writing. And for writing, there are certain common mistakes like uh, there are common pitfalls like, for example, omitting the obvious. In the sense, what we do is, I know Maharashtra, I know where Pune is, and I know where a particular locality in Pune is. So, as though I feel that everybody else will also be knowing that. But my point is, we have to give proper location where that ward is. What is the ward number? In which part of Pune city it lies? What is the direction from a Pune center, central district of Pune? So that if you give that geographical indications properly, then that would be proper. So It is not that I understand, so everyone will understand. So I have to give full details about those particular aspects. So many times there we try to do this, especially in geographical background and socioeconomic background. We try to do these mistakes, and sometimes some data could be left out, which should have been in the report. Many times that happens. Especially again, it is when we talk about socioeconomic background, we try to put many things, but leave aside the important ones. Previously, I got a thesis on self-help groups, analysis of working of self-help groups. Every data about the district was there, but there was no data on the self-help groups only. So so in a way, the background chapter is not related to the study topic. So I raised that issue. So like that, we need to be very, very clear as to what we are telling and whether we are making it clear to a no knowledge person. If somebody else is reading your thesis in the foreign country, can he identify where that particular point is? What is that particular aspect is? So that we need to be omitting the obvious means I know, so everyone knows. That is the attitude. That should not be there. We should be very, very clear and specific in writing the things. That is the first thing. Second one is giving endless description. Please don't go for descriptive things. As I said in beginning, you should be very, very specific and very, very simple. Do not beat around the bush. You need to know what the data needs is its interpretation, not a story. Not a story. Story is true for a paper newspaper article, but for a thesis or for a research report, what they need is interpretation of the table. So don't go on giving description, but focus on the what exactly is the result of the things. And there, as I mentioned, you have to look at the patterns, you have to look at the trends, you have to look at the relationships, you have to look at the similarities, you have to look at the dissimilarities between various variables or between different studies, etc. Then you need to identify where your result, where your study comes into. So please don't give description and be very, very specific about your data. Focus on the analysis and interpretation of the results, not giving the description at all. And another important pitfall that what we usually do is we neglect qualitative data. Uh, Many times we feel that qualitative data is not that worthy to be collected or worthy to be stated. But nowadays, it's not a recent phenomenon. Right from 1990s, if you look at many publications of World Bank or IMF or even the earlier Planning Commission and present Niti Aayog, etc., what they do is they give secondary or quantitative information, but in between in the boxes, they give certain qualitative studies. That means just to substantiate their quantitative studies, they give qualitative data. So even you can do that. So if there is a case study, if there is a success story in your field work, if there's a success story, just make a case out of it and put it in a box. That will be very, very helpful for the not only the future researchers, but also the policymakers. Now, to just give example, I have done recently a survey on the impact of training on the artisans under Pradhan Mantri, this Vishwakarma Yojana, and I found that yes, all are rather happy, all are given toolkits, all are given financial facility, but none of them have risen above the level which they were earlier. Only few have risen. So what I did was after a survey of all the trainees, then I went to these success people, and made stories of them. There I got different insights. That would be a point of research for somebody else in the future or for the government to take adequate steps. So this is how you need to focus on qualitative information also. Please do not neglect qualitative information. So once you write, you have to revise and finalize the text. And for revising and finalizing, what you need to do, you should keep in mind few points like have all important findings been included. So you'll have collected data, you will have made smaller tables, you will have analyzed, you will have tested, then you will have written the recommend findings. And many findings are there. Now, in the report, have you synthesized all the findings, or have you left out some important things, or some things which are not in tune with your with your thinking? But the thing is, whether it suits your thinking or not, all the findings have to be included. So, have all the findings been included? Do the conclusions follow logically from the findings? Many times, what you do is we write conclusions in a generic manner, which is not at all acceptable. The conclusions have to be drawn from your findings, from your interpretation. Then only it will be very, very correct. Otherwise, it will be wrong. Then, are there any overlaps? Many times, unknowingly, repetitions take place. Those repetitions have to be avoided. Is it possible to condense the content? It's very, very important. If it is huge, if it is huge, can we reduce can we reduce the size of the thesis?
बरोबर का नाही? मी नाही म्हणत नाही, हाही म्हणत नाही, मी बसत होतो.
Hello, hello.
प्रेझेंट.
Please mute yourself. So, is it possible to condense the content? That's another question you have to ask while revising. Then, do data in the text agree with the data in tables? So, that is another important point wherein I have found many theses they are inconsistent in terms of the data in table and the data they explain in their text. That you have to verify. And is the sequence of paragraphs and subsections logical and coherent? So, it has to be readable. So, therefore, you have to follow a systematic pattern in the sense you have to start from simple things and go to some complicated or complex issues so that the reader will be in a better way to understand what the situation is. So the logic, the sequencing of arguments is to be very, very essential. So while revising and finalizing draft, you will need to take into account these various aspects. And the best thing is give your draft to your peers or to a friend or to a person who is not in the field so that he will go through it and tell you how to improve the report. And now you have a lot of online language checking tools. You have AI tools like Quillbot, Spinbot, etc. If you just paste your content there, it will tell you where it has to be revised, where it can be, and you can summarize also, you can reduce it also, paraphrase, you can reduce, paraphrase, and you can write it in, you can get the content in other terminologies also. So you need to ensure that your thesis is readable so that others will also be benefited. And after these points, you need to prepare the final report. Otherwise, if you do that, if you do without checking all these things, then a lot of mistakes could be there. And I have myself pointed out a lot of spelling and grammar mistakes. And what I have done is I have recommended for correction of spelling and grammar before the Viva examination. It's just like preparing a new thesis. So please, while preparing thesis only, ensure that you check the grammar and spelling in a correct manner. And as I said now, the word itself has come with inbuilt mechanism to indicate that your spelling is wrong, your grammar is wrong, etc. And as I mentioned, you have AI tools like Quillbot, Spinbot, etc., even Grammarly, etc., which will give you, which will refine your writing and which will make your writing very, very correct. So please use those tools and you can come out with a better report. And another important point is use verb and tenses consistently. And that is the basic rule of English language. So whatever tense you use, whether present or past or future, usually I said for reports, we use past tense, but that has to be used consistently. Tenses and verbs also. Based on the tense, the verb will be there, and you need to use that. And one more point is you should avoid using the first person. That will come later on. Here it is there. So what is the, having done this, there is also what is called as academic writing style. How do we write? So here there are 5 important aspects which you will have to note. One is the writing style has to be formal. Formal in variety of ways. One is in terms of presentation, in terms of writing, and in terms of arguments. So it has to be basically written, not a spoken language. There should not be contractions of the language. We cannot use the short forms. For example, for cannot, you cannot use can't. Like such contraction should not be there. The wording should be in a language should be a formal language. Secondly, it should be technical. Now, I need to clarify, because in the earlier one slide, I mentioned, as far as possible, technical jargons have to be avoided. So the best way is to give a definition of the key technical terms in the annexure, so that the reader will come to know what you are referring to. Of course, if it is a very, very specialized or a scientific text, then using vocabulary, scientific vocabulary is necessary. But otherwise, as far as possible, avoid scientific technical vocabulary and use generic terms, and subject specific vocabulary can be adopted. And for theses, as far as possible, you can use subject specific vocabulary. But even here also, be as less technical as possible. And third parameter is be objective in your statements. So, as I mentioned again earlier, any argument, any statement has to be based on facts, whether you are collected or collected by somebody else, whether you have made the argument or somebody has made the argument. So, any argument, any statement has to be backed up with evidence and examples. So use references, use databases, use information to make your statements supported by the statements. Okay. And fourth and most importantly is, you should be impersonal. You should never use first person noun. The first person noun usage should not be made at all. Never use I, but you can use passive words. For example, the researcher finds that, the researcher feels that, the research observes that, like that. So you can use a passive word, but never use I, we can, but you can use we can use we, uh, because you and your guide are making that statement. So you're together responsible for whatever you are doing, but never use the word I. So I found, I did, I feel. No, use of I has to be totally avoided as far as writing style is concerned. And you should try to give an abstract touch to the arguments. Abstract touch in the sense, just like theories, where we have concepts and the interrelationships, similar concepts and interrelationships you should be able to find out in your studies. Of course, these will be backed up by the data, but using that data, should try to give a model kind of thing. So ultimately, what the researcher is expected is to come out with a new model based on whatever study he has chosen. So therefore, please adopt an academic writing style. Be formal, be technical, but to the minimum extent. And as far as possible, be objective. In all cases, be objective. In all cases, be impersonal. And while writing conclusions, etc., be abstract. In conclusion, don't try to again bring data. In conclusion, you have to be very, very abstract, so that you link up to the theories, you link up to the ideas, and you link up to the themes, but not again giving data in the conclusion part. So this is how you can adopt your develop your writing. And as I said, the statement must be supported by evidence and discussion. One example I have given here. So the statement is, the improved ability to do business in India has arisen due to the Indian government deregulation policy with economic and political reforms. This is the statement which I want to make. And what are the supporting points? So here I have mentioned the corporate tax rate was lowered from 65% to 50%, which has encouraged foreign investment. And this was noticed by the authors Garud and Purohit, which was published in 2007. Similarly, another publication by India Country Review in 2007 stated that the joint venture protection law protecting joint venture partners have also promoted increased investment in India. So this is the supporting statement for my statement. So I'm just giving these as this is an example. So this is how you need to develop your arguments also. So you need to follow a systematic pattern of the thesis, the layout of the thesis, then division of the thesis, the writing style, etc. And then you need to do this. But how exactly we go about writing? And usually it's a common practice. We write sentence by sentence, build a paragraph. Then after building the paragraph, we build a section. And after we build a section, we build a chapter. Then by weaving together chapters, we write or we prepare the report as a whole. So it is from sentence, first sentence to the report as a whole. So if we do that, let me tell you, you will remember each sentence, each section of your thesis. If you do that in this particular fashion, you will definitely remember everything, and whoever asks us at any time will be able to answer any questions relating to your thesis. And there is a format called as peel format in writing the thesis. What is this peel format? It is point wherein it specifies what is the topic you have chosen, what is the issue that you're addressing. That is the point. Then second, the E is elaborate and explain. Why you have to explain and examine, elaborate as to why that point is chosen and what are your arguments. Then the second E is evidence and examples. You have to support that explanation with evidence and examples. And last is L, which in you are linking that evidence, linking that explanation to the question, issue, problem which you have chosen for your study. So if you adopt this, definitely you will be getting a suitable, what you say, report for your thing. And each university has its own policy for the publications. In the research guidelines which universities have formed, they have specified how the report should be. So, but anyway, the general pattern will not change. As I said, there will be a preliminary part, including the cover page, the acknowledgement page, the certificates, then table of contents, list of tables, list of charts, list of abbreviations, etc. That will be the preliminary page. The next part is body of the thesis, wherein you have introductory chapter, you have review of literature, you have methodology, you have background of the study area, then you have data analysis and interpretation, then you have the conclusions and findings. So this pattern, and last, this is the body of the thesis. And the next part is the concluding part, wherein you have the recommendations, areas for further research. Yes, I should also emphasize here that since you are experts in the area that you have chosen, you have gone through vast literature, you have interacted with lot of people, you are the expert in that particular field, and many research questions you have left unanswered because it is difficult for an individual to answer all the questions. So therefore you have left some questions unanswered, that you have to identify as area for further research. So in the concluding chapter, please ensure that you add a section on areas for further research. That has a lot of importance for the future researchers, because that acts as a gap for the future researchers. So please do that. And in the concluding part, we have the references, we have the question data collection tool, we have any other additional information, and we have other information which has to be given to the things. So this common format is there for all the universities, and even for layout as such. Now, as I said, computer gives a predetermined layout. So margins, both left, right, top, below, and spacing between the lines, etc. Then font size, etc. Everything is predetermined. But as I mentioned, you can go with 16 font size for the chapter titles, 14 for the section titles, and 12 font for the text of the report. And references, I told you, you have to do it in alphabetical format. And referencing, you have to be consistent. And whatever style you adopt, the same style has to continue till the end of the report. That will make the report readable, more appealing, and it will not irk or displease the examiner. Otherwise, examiner will put a question on that also. Why so many styles? So please make it uniform. Again, you have to work on that. Therefore, please do that. And one more last point which I want to tell you is, after you submit the thesis to the university, for yourself, you give, for example, in my university, we prepare 4 copies. 2 copies are for examiners, for internal examiner and external examiner. 1 copy is for the university and 1 copy is for the student. We usually take 4 copies. Now, what I suggest to you is, your copy, please don't bind it. Your copy, please don't bind it till the report of the referees come. Because if the referee suggests some recommendations, then you have to make all the corrections in your thesis. And it's better to keep it unbound. And once the report of the referee come, and if they agree to whatever you have done, then only you can bind it. Otherwise, you will have to open that binding and do all tearing, adding, etc., which will be very cumbersome. But again, I said, no, technology has improved and you can do it very conveniently. It's up to you. But this is what I usually advise my students. I say that you please don't bind the copy which you keep for yourself, and keep it unbounded so that you can use it for other. You can bind it after the report of both the teachers come. So the thesis you are writing for examination sake, it has to be technical, at least in methodology part, and it has to have an attractive layout. The language part has to be good, and some rules like referencing, like bibliography, like adding questionnaire, etc., they have to be followed. If that is done, then your report will have less queries. Otherwise, if the queries are towards style and format, then you leave aside the content queries will be there, but at least this is in our hands. Layout, etc., is in our grammar, language is in our hands. So you can definitely minimize the queries in those contexts. So writing report is one, and managing the whole show is another. So both of these have to be managed properly, and only when you do that, then only you can do the better thing. So I end up with this particular graphic wherein you see the frog is in the mouth of the crane, but it is not giving up. It has just holding the neck of the crane so that it can be freed. So writing a report is not that easy. Many times it is disgusting, and many times we should say we should give up. But please do not do that. Try to have some other mechanisms, and do not ever give up. Once again, I am telling you, now you have many AI tools. Even in chat GPT, you just paste the table and prompt it as to what are the variables, what kind of relationship you expect. Just give a prompt like that, it will give the analysis for you. But again, what I caution is, don't take it completely. You have to refine it. You have to revise it. Don't take it completely. You have to refine it and revise it. So therefore, what I mean to say is, now tools are available. Learn those tools. Learn those tools. Master the technique, and you can definitely do good research, and also do prepare good report, and you can be good research guides also. Ultimately, see, my guide used to say, the aim of PhD is not to get a degree, but to become independent guides. Independent guides. To become guides, you need to understand all the aspects of research methodology. Thanks to Ramakrishna More College, which has organized this program to educate you about the basics of research methodology. Because research methodology is a tool which you have to sharpen now and then. Even I also undergo training of different categories, just only to understand, update myself. So that has to be done. If you do that, you'll be good research guides. Now you will be good research candidates, and later on you'll be good research guides, and you will do good research also. So with this, I again stop my presentation here. If you have any queries to ask, you can discuss.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good
This is
afternoon.
Anita Sule.
Yeah.
Sir, I just wanted to ask, what is the minimum and maximum number for the thesis?
Madam, there is no minimum or maximum number.
Huh?
You might have heard about an economist. I'm just not getting his name, but in his A life story was created as the beautiful mind picture. Okay. I'm just not getting his name. The beautiful
John Nash, I believe.
John Nash. John Nash. His thesis was hardly 35 pages, but that thesis gave rise to many more theses. So if you are giving your idea in a concise manner, in a cohesive manner, there is no hard and fast rule that you have to go in for 200 pages or 300 pages of font. No, it is up to you based on what subject you have chosen, what material you have collected, and how you have organized it. If that conveys the message, that is fine. There is no hard and fast rule that it has to be minimum this much or maximum this much.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes.
Sir, one more question in my mind
Yeah.
regarding the literature review, sir.
Okay.
Regarding the literature review, how much books we should review and how much conference paper and how much research paper? Is there any kind of weightage for all the threes?
Madam, again, there is no number for that.
Huh.
No number for research literature purpose. Again, the same answer I have to give. If
Okay,
the review satisfies the purpose, I mean to say, if it is able to find the gaps which you want to, that much
okay,
is enough. But one thumb rule you can adopt. Okay. For
okay,
example, now what we say in social science is 20 years is a generation. And nowadays is changing very fast, but 20 years is generation. So you can go up to 20 years from today back 20 years. So earlier you may not, except for very important papers, you just ignore the earlier other works also. So in that sense, you may get some 20 papers only, or you may get 40 papers only. So that number is okay. But what I mean to say is, if the review again satisfies your objectives or your gap requirement, that is enough. Again, there is no hard and fast like number. The number is not a matter there.
okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, madam.
Sir, this is Chinmay Jain. My
Jim.
question is, uh, how should we write literature review? Like, if we have read a paper, then
Hmm.
what is expected to be written in the literature review? Like, how many words or what it should cover, basically?
Madam, actually, again, it is an art to say. See, for example, I will start with an example so that it will be easy for you to catch up. Now, if I am trying to write about the poverty situation, poverty situation, what I will do is I will try to identify papers which describe the situation of poor in terms of their deprivations. Deprivation is not having access to basic minimum necessities. And what I will say is these papers, they identify that poor households lack access to basic minimum service, or they are deprived of basic minimum services. So this is a kind of clubbing papers which speak of a particular theme. That is one aspect. Another aspect is you can go chronological. Chronological is for the same theme, for the same topic, what earlier people said and what has been the ideas so far. For example, again, taking the example of poverty, there is what is called as poverty line. How the poverty line was measured? So I would start from 1960 Dandekar and Rath study, and till now the Niti Ayog's multidimensional poverty index. So that is the chronological order. So in that process, I try to club all the studies which particularly are which subscribe to a particular opinion. So writing literature review is basically looking at the ideas and how many papers they support the idea and how many papers they diverge from the idea, and there will be somebody else who try to bring a consensus. Now these things you will have to identify and synthesize their ideas. So it is as I said, thematic presentation, it is chronological presentation, it is diverging presentation. That diverging means similarities, dissimilarities, and ultimately you have to synthesize it. That is how you. That is why I said the research questions, they will help you to identify the themes. Themes is, for example, in the first session, one professor said that he was doing on labor absenteeism in small scale industries. So there one theme can be labor absenteeism, another theme can be small scale industries, the other theme can be labor absenteeism in small scale industries. So you have to classify studies in that manner and try to identify what are the common points or what are the uncommon points and try to synthesize yourself. That is how you have to write. But what I have seen, maybe the question in your mind is like this. In many theses, what they do is, Mr. X says this, Mr. Y says this, Mr. Z says this. That should not be the pattern. It should not mere recounting of what they have said. It is the ideas which you have come across and which you are synthesizing. That has to be the way the review of literature has to be done. Now, just since you asked the question, I will just direct you to a particular one app that is called as elicit.ai, 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 elicit.ai. Just go there and type a keyword. What it gives is, it gives summary of 4 top cited papers. Let me be very specific. Summary of 4 top cited papers.
Mhm.
There in bottom, you can go with the other papers also. But here, the top cited papers, it will give and summarize the things. And here, as I said, the themes are there, the patterns are there, the chronology is there, the agreements and disagreements are there. So that you'll be able to get it. So please note that AI tool, elicit, elicit.ai.
Yes,
And
sir.
if you go there, definitely you will get answer for yourself. Maybe I'm very not clear, because had I demonstrated, I would have been very clear. But since I can't demonstrate here now, I will be only telling you to go to that elicit.ai, which will clarify your doubt.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, I would be looking forward for such more sessions where you give idea about all these.
Yeah, in fact, the second session I wanted to take up AI tools for review, but since somebody is there to talk about AI tools in academic research, maybe
Yes,
if time permits, I can join for that session also. No issue.
sure, sir. Because different people can give different opinions about things. Maybe
Yes.
there would be something which you will provide and someone else will not provide. So,
Yes, madam, it is a learning experience for me also.
yes,
And every time, it's not only this time, every time it is a learning experience.
yes, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, sir, for the information.
thank you.
Sir,
Yeah, please.
hello.
Yeah, please.
Sir, actually, there are so many content pirates are available with the help of technology.
Okay.
So, can we take the help of them as the
Actually,
constraints of?
yeah, I can understand. I can understand. Now there are paraphrasing and rephrasing tools also. Once you download a particular content and rewrite it, you can post it or paste it in those paraphrasing tools. For example, SCIT site.ai is one tool. Quillbot is another tool. Spinbot is another tool. If you paste there and ask it to paraphrase, it will convert the whole text in. The idea is same, but the words are different. And then you can paste it to a plagiarism tool. There are plagiarism check tools available also. You can check, you can paste it there, and you can see how much plagiarism there. And I have tested it myself. We can minimize the plagiarism by doing all this. But only thing is, you have to do it properly. Do it properly. And as I said, once you get the content, once you develop the content has to be revised and refined, which and made it relevant to your topic. That care you have to take. There are tools, but only thing is you have to responsibly use the tools. So as you said, we can reduce the plagiarism using AI tools also.
Sir, thank you. Another question is, there is the plagiarism softwares. Okay,
Yeah.
so we take the literature review, and if our literature review is much more, then ultimately we get trapped into the literature review plagiarism. So, what
Okay.
is the solution for that, or what we are supposed to do?
No, if you cite properly, if you cite properly, Plagiarism for literature review will be exempted. I'm sure. Citation has to be proper. For example, where we want to use inverted commas, use inverted commas. Statements if that use inverted commas, or you properly cite using brackets, year, page number, etc. So your plagiarism will be automatically exempted. In the sense, it will not show it as plagiarized. If you cite, that is what I said. I've been emphasizing it. Cite your references, sources. So use referencing properly. That is the only way.
For literature review, generally plagiarism, if we write and cite very properly, then it doesn't
Yes.
come under plagiarism.
Yes, yes. If you cite properly, plagiarism can be avoided.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, madam.
On behalf of Ramakrishna More College, Department of Commerce, for delivering session of preparation of research report. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Archana ma'am. Hello. Do you have any assignment or something or deadline to submit it? '28. Okay. Actually, unfortunately, I could not able to attend that. That's why I asked. Yes, ma'am. I already. Yeah. I already informed you about that. Okay.
Archana ma'am, will we get the recordings of this session, ma'am?
Actually,